Mary Ashford had grown up in the quiet, dust-colored town of Willow Creek, where every breeze seemed to carry whispers and every whisper carried judgment. From the time she was a child, people had found ways to make her body a spectacle, too soft, too round, too different from the delicate girls who floated through town like feathers on summer wind. Mary was broader in her shoulders, fuller in her hips, and her face held a softness that made her mother anxious with every passing year. By the time Mary was 16, her mother had insisted she wear a rough burlap sack whenever they went into town, claiming it was to protect her from cruel comments. But Mary knew the truth, her mother was ashamed. So Mary learned to lower her head, hide her eyes, and walk quietly as though her very existence was something that needed to apologize for itself. The sack hung over her like a prison, itchy and heavy, scratching her skin and her spirit alike. She worked in her father's bakery where she kneaded dough before sunrise, shaping the warm loaves that the town adored. Yet no one ever thanked her, they pretended the bread simply appeared as if by magic. The only time Mary felt like herself was at night, when the moon rose and the town was asleep. Behind the barn, where no one could see her, she danced. She was not graceful by the standards others worshipped, but she was free, her feet beating soft rhythms into the dirt, her heart lifting with each movement. It was her secret rebellion, the small slice of life that belonged entirely to her. Everything changed the night Elias Carter arrived. He was a traveler, a rancher with calloused hands and a quiet, thoughtful gaze. He had come to Willow Creek not for prosperity or excitement, but to escape grief he could not outrun. His mother had passed only months earlier, and ever since, he had wandered from town to town searching for something he could not name. He found work breaking horses for a ranch outside town and lodged in a room above the general store. He kept mostly to himself, speaking only when spoken to, his voice calm, his presence steady. But one evening, while leading his horse past the bakery's back shed, he heard something soft and unexpected, the faint sound of footsteps, uneven but rhythmic, like someone moving with both caution and joy. Curious, he followed the sound until he saw her, Mary, dancing in the moonlight, without the sack, without fear, with her hair loose and wild, her arms open wide as if embracing the night itself. She didn't look clumsy to him, she looked alive, as though the world had tried to force her into silence but her spirit had refused to surrender. For a long moment he simply watched, not with judgment but with something like wonder. When Mary noticed him, she froze, panic spreading across her face. She reached for the discarded sack, her hands trembling. "Don't," Elias said gently, his voice low and warm in the quiet night. "You don't need to hide from me." Mary's breath caught. No one had ever said that, not her mother, not the townsfolk, not even the mirror she avoided. "You're not supposed to see me," she whispered, as though the very idea violated some unspoken law. Elias shook his head slowly. "I'm glad I did." Mary didn't know how to hold those words, they felt too fragile, too dangerous. So she fled, gathering the sack and slipping into the shadows, leaving Elias standing alone beneath the moon, realizing that something in his heart had shifted, something that felt like awakening. The next day, the town gossiped, twisting the moment into mockery, laughing about the stranger who had seen the girl who was never meant to be seen. But Elias paid no mind. All he could see was the joy she carried when she thought no one was watching, the quiet courage of someone who had learned to endure the world by shrinking from it. He had found something rare, someone real in a town full of masks. And though Mary did not yet know it, the night she danced under the stars marked the beginning of a story that would change both of their lives forever. The morning after Mary's dance beneath the moon, the town of Willow Creek buzzed with whispers, sharp and poisonous, twisting the truth into something ugly, as they always did. They said the stranger must be desperate to even look at her, they said Mary had probably trapped him, they said no man with sense would ever choose a girl who hid behind a sack. Mary kept her head down and her hurt tucked silently inside her chest, pretending not to hear what rang louder than church bells. She told herself Elias would forget about her, that whatever kindness he had shown had been nothing more than passing curiosity from a traveler who would soon be gone. But Elias did not leave. He spent the day working the ranch horses, yet his thoughts kept drifting back to her, to the way her eyes had held both fear and a spark of something bright, like the last ember in a dying fire refusing to fade. That evening, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky burned gold to rose, Elias walked to the bakery yard again, his steps slow, careful, like a man approaching something sacred. Mary stood there, as if expecting him, though she hated that she had been waiting. The sack was tied back over her head, its rough fibers casting harsh shadows across her cheeks. She didn't speak when he approached, she only braced herself, as if preparing to be wounded. "Mary," Elias said softly, and her name in his voice sounded like gentleness made real. "Look at me." She shook her head. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "The town will think things. They already do." Elias took one more step, still leaving her space. "Let them think," he said. "They've been thinking about you your whole life. And none of it has ever been true." Her throat tightened, and she gripped the fabric under her chin as though it were the rope tying her to safety. "They say I'm ugly," she said, barely breathing the words. "They say I'm too big to be a wife. Too clumsy to dance. Too foolish to believe anyone could ever." Her voice broke, unable to finish the thought. Elias reached out, not to grab, not to demand, but to offer, and let his hand hover just near the knot of the sack. "May I?" he asked. And that question, that asking, was somehow the gentlest thing anyone had ever done for her. Slowly, painfully, Mary nodded. Elias loosened the knot with careful fingers, as though he were unwrapping something fragile and precious, and the sack slid from her head and fell softly to the ground. Mary stood very still, her breath trembling, her face bare to the world and to him. Elias did not flinch, he did not look away, not even for a heartbeat. He saw the roundness in her cheeks, the curve of her jaw, the deep brown eyes that held entire storms of sorrow and hope. But he did not see flaw, he saw her, whole, human, luminous in her honesty. "Mary," he said, voice steady, "you are not the names they gave you. You are not their gossip. You are not their cruelty." Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the world. "I don't know how to be anything else," she whispered. And that was when Elias dropped to one knee, not in dramatic flair, but with a sincerity that filled the air like a held breath. "Then let me show you," he said. "Marry me, Mary Ashford. Let me stand beside you. Let me see you every day, not hidden, not ashamed, just as you are. I don't need perfection. I don't want a porcelain doll. I want you." Mary's hands flew to her mouth as the tears spilled over, not from pain this time, but from the violent, breathtaking relief of being chosen. No one had ever offered her a life where she didn't need to disappear. The world around them fell away, the bakery walls, the taunting voices, the years of quiet humiliation. All that remained was this moment, raw and real. "Yes," she breathed, her voice shaking but sure. "Yes, I will." And when she said it, it felt less like agreeing to a future and more like reclaiming her own existence. For the first time in her life, Mary Ashford stepped forward, not behind a sack, not behind silence, but as herself.